that there are many, many forms of optimism that humans have tried to establish. They see that their vision of a society without problems, without hunger, with their sense of justice, is a goal that they try to create through various political and ideological means. However, when human beings try to establish such an optimistic society, it frequently turns into something flawed and even dangerous. Classic examples are when the people who felt oppressed during the time of King Louis XVI wanted to establish a society based purely on reason. Already, many philosophers, Jean-Jacques Rousseau and many others, had been pushing the idea that reason by itself will help human beings to live a life without suffering and oppression. And in the French Revolution, they wanted to bring those ideals of pure reason into life. But while they spoke of equality and fraternity, they also ended up becoming the means of a reign of terror, where they ended up executing many more people than the French king ever had. And that their vague ideal, their rationalistic perspective, in fact, brought great death. And because they saw the people of faith as the enemies of reason, they attacked the church and destroyed her institutions, killed the bishops, the priests, and the religious. And we still celebrate feasts of those martyrs. We also saw an ideal of optimism portrayed by Karl Marx, a society in which everybody would receive what they need and everybody would give what they could, and that the means of production would not be in the hands of a few wealthy people, but everybody would share equally. And this ideal society sounded just. But remember, Marx also saw that one of the things that hindered this ideal of optimism was belief in God. He called faith and religion the opiate of the people. And he rejected Christian faith and hope. He had been converted to Lutheranism as a young man, but he rejected it in the name of his optimistic view of an ideal society. And when his disciples began to live out his optimistic ideal of an egalitarian society, they ended up becoming the perpetrators of mass murder, killing 62 million of their own citizens in the Soviet Union, between 75 and 200 million of their own citizens in communist China. Half of the citizens of Cambodia were killed by its communist government. And that these ideals were used to bring mass killing. And we have to see that we still have many people who want to have an ideal society. When we listen back, if you recall, some of you are old enough to remember, the ideology that was promoted when talking about abortion, we want it to be rare and safe. People wanted it to be something that would defend a woman's right to live as she wants to do. And these ideals are still promoted. Our present administration pushes them strongly. And at every possible occasion, through executive orders and legislation, and now a mandate that sees those of us who have hope in Jesus Christ, the life of the world, they see us as their enemy. And they will trample, they are willing to trample upon our First Amendment rights to have freedom of religion. They want to do to us what they did in the Soviet Union, where they guaranteed freedom of worship. That, under the Soviets, was a way to keep religion inside the walls of the church by itself, so that the state could promote its optimistic ideal of society. And what it ended up being is the basis for the persecution of the church, so that millions and millions of Christians died. Far more Christians died in the 20th century because of the various ideals: National Socialism in Germany, communism in Russia and in China and elsewhere. And they were seen as enemies of the state because of the state's optimistic ideals. And we are seen as their opponents because we insist that we cannot pay and participate in the killing of the unborn. We cannot be forced by the government to commit mortal sin and put our souls in immortal danger. And I know some people justify this and say, well, it's legal. Yes, it is legal. The same Supreme Court that said in the Dred Scott decision that people of African descent are inherently inferior to people of European descent and that they should be enslaved. The same Supreme Court that in Plessy versus Ferguson said that you can have separate and equal facilities, thereby justifying racial segregation. That institution is the one that says that the human life in the womb is expendable. And we understand that whether it be racism or the killing of the unborn, it may be legal, but it is not right. And we are going to keep our focus on Jesus Christ, our hope, not on optimism. We don't trust in politicians to be a solution to the problems of the world. And we don't see that death is our ally, whether it be the death of the unborn, whether it be the death of children, whether it be the death of the sick and elderly. Already in Belgium, it is now permitted to have assisted suicide for children who are deemed unworthy of life. And that this is something that people will use here in the name of having an ideal society. You watch and see. It's already legal in Oregon. And they've tried to make it legal in Massachusetts. And they will try to make it legal everywhere. No, their optimism is as dangerous today as it was in the French Revolution and the Soviet Union and Communist China and Nazi Germany. It's dangerous. And we instead are going to focus on a hope in Jesus Christ, no matter what they try to require us to do, and no matter how they come against us. We will overcome them as we have those other forms of government, as we have those other ideals, as we have those other false optimisms. We do it not by our power, but by Christ.